So first things first, a little context. So I'm going to tell you a few things that you already know and maybe a few things that you don't. And I have kind of a sort of rambling, circuitous story to tell you about how I ended up here today. And hopefully it'll be a little fun. So a couple things that you already know. First of all, obviously there are very few things in this world that affect us and connect us more than music. It is as personal as it gets. It's how we identify ourselves, from our favorite bands to our favorite styles of music. This is how we define who we are, what groups of people we belong to, our tribes, if you could think of it that way. Music is also the soundtrack to all the great moments of our lives, right? Our birthday parties, weddings, funerals, sporting events, film and television. It's everywhere we go. It surrounds us like air and water. Because music has this magical ability to communicate ideas and feelings in ways that are more clear than with words alone. One more thing you might already know intuitively. Music is also inherently interactive. And we see this in all four corners of the world, in every geography, in every culture, in every style of music. From gamelan to Bollywood to ragas, reggae, K-pop, electronica, heavy metal, what do they all have in common? When the music plays, our bodies move. What do? We dance, we clap, we tap our toes, we air guitar, we drum in the steering wheel. And all of that's involuntary. It's not because we're thinking about it, it's just happening. It's part of the natural human response mechanism that we have that's part of the human experience. Which explains why most of us, when we're walking past a piano or a guitar maybe, we feel that impulse to reach out and play a little bit, even if we really can't. And this is really where we become a tale of two cities. This is where we become divided into the haves and the have-nots, because the fact of the matter is, while most of the 7 billion people in the world are in fact music fans, most music fans are not musicians. And so, for most of us, that impulse to reach out and play is broken. The reality is, we lack the ability to string the notes and chords together in a way that would be meaningful and satisfying. We lack the ability to compose. Now, the way that the rules generally work is, in order to play music or compose music, you have to learn how to master some form of interface. A saxophone, an accordion, bagpipes, 88-key piano. And those of you who are not musicians know these things look like towering walls between you and the driver's seat. And it is. It might as well be the Berlin Wall separating a world of non-musicians from the island of musicians. Also, effectively separating the largest population of music fans from the most powerful form of music experience. This is what I think of personally in my life as the problem of the interface. Now, fortunately, history has taught us ways to solve these problems. I remember the first generation of digital arcade games where you could drop a quarter in the slot and jump in the cockpit of that jet plane. Or you could drop a quarter in the slot and jump in the driver's seat of that race car. And these were amazing, life-altering, oh my God experiences, right? Incredible. And mostly because you didn't have to know how to drive. You didn't have to learn how to fly. It was just a stick and a throttle. It just worked. You put the quarter in and it just worked. And the reason it worked was because somebody at some point had sat down and analyzed and reverse engineered all of the circumstances that go into flying a plane, but also all of the decisions that go into the experience of flying a plane, what to do and when to do it. Now, I have to confess something. A few years ago, at the very beginning of the journey that brought me here, in a third-floor flat in a house down at 17th and Capitol, one day I was thinking about a barcode. I hadn't been smoking anything. I was just thinking about this barcode. This particular barcode happened to be on a box of crackers, and it's sort of academic, but it occurred to me that this particular barcode probably held a wealth of information around, the manufacturing date, the ingredients, the expiration date, all sorts of information that could be fit into this tiny little package. And I thought, man, I wish we had something like that for music. Isn't it possible that we could develop some way, some sort of system like that could look at the compositional information in music? And I was thinking all of this because at the time I was working as an artist manager and an A&R consultant, and basically what that means is I'm working on the front lines of trying to help bands and songwriters find record deals and publishing deals. Sometimes I'd be working for the band, and sometimes I'd be working for the record company. As it turns out, I didn't know this at the time, but as it turns out, there was a whole field of science that had been going on for many years around this very idea, the whole idea of codifying or reducing to code the compositional information in music in very, very detailed ways. And as it turns out, the field of algorithmic composition, which is what it's called, has now, as I stand here today, been ongoing for more than 30 years. And it is, in a way, you could sort of think of it as the study of music as a language. And like most fields of science, it accomplishes these amazing feats by virtue of very tedious day in and day out studies and research. And in the case of algorithmic composition, it is literally, I'm criminally oversimplifying it, but it is in essence a study of what note should follow which other note and when, or which sequence of notes should follow which other sequence of notes or when. And if that sounds at all familiar to you, vaguely, it did to me too. In fact, when I learned more about it, it actually reminded me a little bit of spell check, right? Which is another system that deals with a limited data set from which many, many wonderful things are born. In fact, there's only 26 letters in our alphabet, and yet all 200,000 words in the dictionary are made up of unique strings and sequences of those same 26 letters. If you get the sequence of the letters right, you form the word that conveys the meaning. And as it turns out, algorithmic composition works exactly the same way. And the implications are no less significant in terms of spell check. Spell check was the rocket fuel that made word processing take off. And word processing changed the world. Word processing turned us from a population of readers into a population of writers. Now, it didn't guarantee that you were going to be Hemingway. Certainly, there's plenty of evidence of that. But what it did do was it gave you a voice. And so, in the terms of getting the sequence of the notes right, just as getting the letters right make the word that convey the meaning, getting the sequence of the notes right is what forms the style of the song, the style of the artist, the style of the genre, the style of the mood. But most importantly, by understanding the sequence of the notes and how to string those together in a way that's meaningful and satisfying, it solves the problem of the interface and allows us to put you, the fan, in the cockpit of the song or the cockpit of your favorite artists through nothing more complicated than touching a screen. So really what this boils down to, and this is like the big takeaway here, I know that every generation, we have a new generation of kids who grow up assuming that the world's always been the way it is, and so today we probably have lots of kids running around thinking that women have always been astronauts. And I think the implications of this technology potentially are that there is, maybe now or maybe in the near future, a generation of kids that'll grow up assuming that music has always been interactive, that they always had a choice between the passenger seat and the driver's seat, that they always had a choice to hear or be heard. Thank you.